Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Katherine Kelly, and I'm guessing that there are things you don't know about anxiety. Now, we talk every day about the mind and body aspects of treating anxiety. And as a psychologist, all we were taught were mind and body kind of things. And yet, there is so much more that a lot of people don't even know about anxiety. And that is basically why I wrote this next book that's coming out in May. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that later, but I want to kind of explain more and more about really the body, mind, and soul aspects of anxiety. Now, one of the things that came out of me writing this book was creating this model that's called the Soul Informed Care Model. And I'm trying to help people understand that, again, we are taught to believe that anxiety is primarily about the biochemistry the mind, how the mind works, but there are so many more aspects to basically how we experience anxiety. And it's super important to start expanding the view because for those of you who struggle with anxiety, many of you know, wow, I've tried the medications. Yes, they work to some extent, thank God. Wow, my mind, no matter what medications I'm on, my mind still spins and still gets latched onto some of those ruminating thoughts or some of those kinds of, I call them tracks down of the brain. Your neural pathways are carved in a way to believe a certain thing, get yanked into that mindset, get yanked into that loop of thinking. And so all of those are real. All of those aspects of anxiety are very real. But for those of you who've done that work, the body aspect and the mind work, and yet there's still something that keeps snagging you, something that keeps getting under your skin, something that you know that there's something else going on. I want to help people understand that there really is more to anxiety, depression, grief, PTSD, any of the psychological concerns than the mind and the body. Now, I'm not saying just, meaning those are very important aspects of care, but we have to start informing people of the fact that there are soul aspects that could be part of this as well. So that is why when I wrote this book, and I'll go ahead and flash this, I'm doing show and tell. This is the cover of the book, Anxiety Treating Body, Mind, and Soul. This is the first book in a series of probably between 12 and 15 books that are going to help people understand individual psychological concerns from the soul side as well as the body and the mind with the updated treatment, the updated categories. So I'm really kind of bringing the what we already know back out to the world in a condensed form so people can have it all in one place. And then I'm expanding the idea of, okay, what are the soul aspects? And I'm getting really amazing feedback from people who are reading this book, physicians, nurses, energy workers, astrologers, body workers, any other administrators. I've got all these different folks who have been reviewing the book already, and they're all telling me, wow, this stuff needs to be out there. So it's really important for me to help people understand that, okay, this stuff has been around for ages, but it's not known in the mainstream for many reasons. And part of the book actually explains why that is the case as well. But as far as treating anxiety, one of the things that I'm trying to help people understand is that there are all of these additional soul factors that go into how we experience anxiety, depression, all those different kinds of concerns. But in this book, for particular, the anxiety, there are all these different soul aspects that basically go into understanding, how these anxious symptoms arose, how they got kind of programmed into your system. A lot of them are residual from past life experiences. They could be this life experience, but basically this time experiences in this lifetime, but basically they're based on what I call energetic imprints to the soul. So there's three levels of healing as far as I'm concerned. The first level is intellectual healing. We have to get our brain wrapped around, oh gosh, how did this start? How did this come together? The second part of it is releasing the emotions. It's not just acknowledging the emotions, it's actually releasing the emotions because we have to remember that everything is energy. And the energy of anxiety at the time that we first experience something that is acutely anxiety provoking or traumatic that triggers that anxiety reaction in us, that energy is stored in us, and that energy creates sort of like this circuit breaker that triggers anytime we have subsequent kinds of anxiety reactions. So it's super important to understand that anxiety is a huge part of any kind of illness, but particularly anything to do with a lot of the mental health concerns. So when it comes to anxiety, it's almost like our central processing system, our soul, is triggering us to help us realize, okay, there is a wound here. What are you going to do about it? And it keeps triggering it and triggering it and triggering it until we can get to the point where we nail down where it came from. Now, I'm going to give you an example of something that happened yesterday within a client session. I have a client I've worked with for several years on and off. He has a lot of anxiety. He's in a very high stress job, but we've managed that for the probably last 2 or 3 years. He's gone through some transition, but he's really well managed. He's catching his negative thinking. He's catching some of his thoughts that were self-defeating, all those kinds of things. Something happened at work just 2 or 3 days ago for him. And we started this session yesterday saying, wow, okay, I haven't been sleeping. I'm ruminating. I've got those thoughts. And I just, it was really interesting because I was watching what was happening as he was describing it to me. And he went right back into that neural pathway. The neural pathway is the pathway that gets carved kind of into our basically our brain. And the way I describe it, it's like a semi truck drives down the side of a road and creates a rut in the road. And so that neural pathway just really gets triggered because it's what we're used to thinking, it's what we're used to reacting to. And I explain some of this in the book, but I tell people it's like we have to consciously realize, wow, we are in that rut that semi truck drove. We got to grab the wheel, we've got to yank ourselves out of that. And it takes a lot of endurance and a lot of really just a lot of energy and a lot of awareness to pull yourself out of it. He was not pulling himself out of that at all yesterday. And I was watching this and I kind of let him talk it through. And then I stopped him and I reminded him about the semi truck neural pathway. And he's like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm remembering that. He said, I just can't get myself out of this. So I did exactly what I mentioned earlier is I helped him understand, okay, where did this get started? So from the intellectual healing perspective, I helped him understand, okay, we have to draw those connections for you. We have to teach you how to release the emotions. And then we've got to get down to that soul healing perspective, that energetic imprint that is left on his soul that is triggering the mind and the body and everything else that was happening with his anxious responses. And so I walked him through the process of going back in time in this lifetime to help him identify the first time he felt that. And he brought up his rageaholic father. Basically, he had a very rageful father. He said he experienced a lot growing up. We already knew this, but it was helping him pin it down together to that was the reaction he was feeling. And he started feeling a lot of that anxiety all over again because it was reminding him. So the emotional part was coming up. So I helped him connect the dots. I helped him get to that point of experiencing the emotion again. I helped guide him for how to release that emotion, both within the session yesterday and also in between this session and the next one I have with him, so that he can do some of this work on his own in his own time. And he understood how, wow, he's still got a lot warehoused from all of that from childhood. And it was initiating and instigating his anxiety reaction now because of this other event that really had nothing to do with these rageaholic experiences he had with his father as a child, but it was stimulating the same kind of reaction. So he understood it. The emotions came up. I taught him how to get through that. I showed him how that is going to be helpful at the energetic perspective for his soul to release this kind of stuff. And then I told him when we meet next time, if there's residue, if there's some leftover stuff, we will go to that soul level and I'll do some soul healing work with him. So that's the energetic component of anxiety. So your anxious reactions may have nothing at all to do with the incident that happened now, but it can be triggered because of what has been left on the soul from years ago, including in some ways previous lifetimes. Now, I was glancing around for this. I knew I had this near me, but these are the 3 levels of healing. We have to get through the intellectual healing. We have to understand how it is warehoused or stored in our bodies. And then also understand, wow, okay, my soul is signaling me to try to take care of this. It's trying to get my attention that there is leftover stuff. There's this residue or debris that is left there that is triggering every subsequent reaction to anxiety. So I'm trying to help people understand that that is all soul based. Now, some of the things you may not know, in addition to the energetic part of this, and I'm looking at my whole soul model that I created last fall as part of doing these trainings for SoulHealth scholars. It's these certifications I'm creating for practitioners and coaches and administrators and educators to understand and integrate their understanding more about the soul within treatment because something is seriously lacking. But I created this model. And so if you think about anxiety, I'm just going to read some of these off. It very well could be from past life trauma. Your anxiety reactions now could be from past life trauma because again, your soul comes with you into every lifetime, even though your body does not. But if there's an energetic imprint on that soul, energetic imprint on the soul, which is energy itself, it sends glitches, it sends tremors through the system, it sends um, awarenesses or messages that there's something there that hasn't been healed yet. And that can happen from this lifetime, like I said, or it can happen because you've had experiences in past lifetimes that are carried over. Particular to anxiety, you can have fears of animals, you can have fears of bridges, you can have fears. I just spoke with someone yesterday who said that she has this really uncanny fear of flying and claustrophobia, and she's never had an issue with anything in a plane or anything in a claustrophobic experience in this lifetime. And that is because it is very likely related to past life enclosure or imprisonment or something else. We're going to do a soul healing session with her in a few weeks to help her understand what that is. So it could be past life trauma. It could be ancestral trauma. It could be ancestral suffering. It could be that you are carrying the energetic heritage of your ancestors forward, but that it's showing up basically through anxiety happening in your own body. It could be part of your astrological personality. Now, interestingly, for those of you who know something about astrology, there are certain astrological aspects of a person's chart that can integrate as part of your personality and can make you more sensitive to stress and make you more sensitive to emotions. And that can also add to your anxiety reactions. Your anxiety could just be part of a life lesson that your soul has chosen to overcome in this lifetime, but that it's showing up through anxiety in order for it to get your attention. So it could be a life lesson. It could be a gender heritage thing. Boy, I think about all the trauma both male souls and female souls have experienced just as being male or female throughout the heritage. It could be something like that. It could be soul age. So younger souls tend to react bigger and they tend to not have the resources or the tools that are inherent in older souls that have carried wisdom throughout their lifetime. So it could be some of those things. So we have all of these different aspects from a spiritual perspective that very, very much contribute to the whole soul experience, which is basically what I call that whole soul model. I keep calling it the whole soul experience and the whole soul model because we have to take into consideration that it is not just the mind or the body that we are acting on. It is basically all three. And sometimes the soul is a much bigger category to consider than what we are used to considering as part of the typical treatment of anxiety and depression and grief and all those kinds of things. So I wanted to give you kind of an update. I'm obviously excited and passionate about getting this information out there to the world. I've been doing this work forever. It's integrated throughout several years of my career with doing psychological work. I talk to clients about it all the time, but it's time to get this out to the world. So this book is coming out in May. You're going to get more information about that soon, about all the things that are rolling out. But I just want people to understand there are a lot of things people don't know about anxiety that it's time to know about. So I hope this gave you some food for thought, probably expanded a whole lot of ideas about how anxiety is created and manifested and persists, how it persists. But this information definitely needs to get out there. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Sending light and love to you. And I am looking very forward to providing this Soul of Psychology series to you in the years to come. Have a great day. Bye-bye.